See, I did it myself. I know.
Sorry, I was on
Well,
mute.
At
yes.
first, I thought you were just like extending the gag.
I actually
Uh,
have stickers. Sorry, I was on mute, but I'm having here our stickers. So there's Joy, Christian, and myself.
I love it.
the very exclusive stickers. I did I give you guys the small version of those? I can't remember. Okay, yeah, so I've got those. So I'll have some more in next
Seattle.
week. So yeah, lots going on. But welcome, great to see you. I made the comment. I said here we are for another monthly episode. Doesn't feel like a month. It feels like at most like 3.5 weeks since we've last done
Maximum.
this.
Time is a social construction, as Joy would usually say.
Yes.
That's right.
This series is a monthly webcast focused on the rapidly evolving and expanding Microsoft 365 governance story. It seems like there's always something going on with governance. And our goal here is to share insights, best practices, and the latest information about new governance features and capabilities within Microsoft 365, as well as the practical application of those things. So we're dedicated to anything and everything governance in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So if you have questions, you have comments, thoughts, things that we should share, guests, any ideas at all, please comment. And for the 18th episode, well, I guess first we'll say what else is going on? Where you guys been? What are you doing now? What's going on?
Prepping for Seattle, but
It's now finally hot and warm in Germany. I don't know the degrees, but yeah. So this is now the time where in 1 hour, I'm on my way to our local swimming pool and just enjoy end of working day.
nice.
It's wonderful. I love it.
I'm
A
jealous.
few conferences where I'm currently traveling. The next one will be next Saturday, Collab Days, Hamburg, Germany. I will talk about SharePoint contract management and advanced quality management topics. And then I will travel to my son. He's going to study for 10 weeks in Stanford, California. And I will travel to San Francisco
very
and visit
nice.
him for 1 week. That's going to be
My-
awesome.
My old stomping grounds down there. So I'm born and
Really?
raised in the Bay Area and spent a lot of time.
You're from the Sacramento area, I think. Yeah.
We moved there later, but I from the Bay Area, but I actually worked down the peninsula for over a decade. In fact, spent a few years at Hewlett Packard in Palo Alto. Throw a
Okay.
rock, hit Stanford campus.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
Great.
Had,
1 week of father and son quality time.
It's a great area down there. It's very built out, heavily populated, crowded.
Nice way of putting it.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
But it's a beautiful area. Look, if money were no object, I would actually live. Folks that from the Bay Area know, like I love like a little bit south of there, Los Altos Hills. But it's
So like the beach or
to-
Monterey are beautiful.
that's all beautiful as well, further
Mhm.
south. But yeah, so love that area. But yeah, no, I'm getting ready. Of course, I'll be up in Seattle as well. But in between there, tomorrow, in fact, I'm loading up the truck and driving. We're making the move to Texas. So
Hey,
have a new
that's very
place
exciting.
down in down the Dallas area. Excited to get down there. And so I'm still exhausted, but I see a light at the end of the tunnel in 2 weeks.
Moving is work.
So there's that, and then fly back here. I have to be back in Salt Lake, and then I go to Seattle, then come back, pick up a car, and drive a second time to Texas. So 2 weekends in a row. Get to do that.
That's always
18
like
and
an
a half
18
hour
hours. That's exhausting. Absolutely.
It is. But yeah, I'll enjoy that drive. The truck drive, not so fun. Driving my car, I enjoy driving my car. It won't be as bad.
Yeah.
But listen, for the 18th episode, we welcome our good friend and community contributor and Microsoft 365 architect, Diego Silva.
Yay!
Hey! And he's muted.
We have so much manners.
I had to.
Welcome. So, Diego, for folks who don't know you, why don't you do a quick introduction besides what I just introduced?
Yes, fun fact is actually all community events that I've been doing, I always went by my full name, Diego Domingos da Silva. I used to just use a little shorten as Diego Silva, and you're actually bringing that back. So that's cool, actually, when I saw that in the banner. But anyway, I've been working with SharePoint since 2009, which then evolved to Microsoft 365. And now we're back on the whole governance conversation that we had way back in the day.
Thankfully, we're back on
sites
this.
were flourishing everywhere, right? But this has been my life. Different stories with different people, but at the same time, doing the same exact thing, just with prettier interfaces now. And with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I think that's why we're interested in getting some time with you to talk about. I know that you've been doing a deployment. Like I just got wrapped up with a lengthy Copilot training, deployment, and adoption strategy with a very large global client. And it's interesting looking at all these things where the question is usually asked after the deployment.
Yes.
Now we're seeing people are creating agents and they're doing a bunch of things. What's the best practices to manage all of this? So, you didn't have time to hear any of this before, any of the planning any listen to any of the advice. You wanted to, let's just quickly, people will basically do the right thing. Let's just roll it. Let's get it out there. And it'll work, or AI will help, right?
Oh, AI will fix
Deploy
all
and
the
pray.
content problems.
So I think for me, one of the difficulties, or like one of the added complications that you have now, is the fact that we're in the cloud, right? You're not relying on a server that has patches that you can like time the patches along with whatever work that you're doing. I say this all the time, like we're all learning how to pilot a plane mid-flight while the plane is still being designed.
Yeah.
So with Copilot agents is the same thing. Yes, you have some governance components, but it's still, let's be honest, it's still a little bit weak. And then things are still happening for us to discover all these agents that are coming out and all that. But I like to pull back a lot because my case is really teaching people that governance is still relevant, that governance still matters, because there's no point on you creating this plan for rolling out agents and all that, when in reality, your SharePoint sites are still a mess. When you have information that, that is still all over the place, when you have like network drives, and then now people don't know where these documents are sitting in a network drive, or whether they are sometimes in OneDrive also. And then you add the complication of folks leaving the organization. So it's a little bit of everything that I face. And just to add, not to give the full story because we have a whole hour to talk about this, but really convincing leadership and convincing your managers that governance is important, because architects, admins, I feel like one of the problems that I face, and I feel like people like me might face all the time, is that it's hard to convince folks that governance is important until it is, until a major data leak occurs, and then your stuff is all over the internet, and then what?
Yeah.
So it's not a very, I hate to say this, but sometimes it's not a very gratifying job, because it's important, but you either get it or you don't. And if you're lucky to work with like higher management that get that, it's an easier path. But sometimes folks don't get it until they get hit with something big. And then everyone is just scrambling around.
I think that's one of the sometimes gratifying, sometimes frustrating things about being in this space that we, for some reason or other, we chose to be in the governance space, which is that intersection of people and technology. And there's something about human nature. It's almost like I'm not willing to do the hard work until it's proven to me I have to.
Yeah.
And sometimes, unfortunately, that is a data breach. Sometimes it's the fact that SharePoint search sucks. Why? Because you never throw anything away. And it's having those conversations over and over. And Diego, like you said, we've been there. We've seen the things. We have the horror stories. And you can tell an organization, trust me. I've seen what happens if you go down this path. Don't do it. Oh, but we're different. We'll be fine.
Yeah. I always use the example of as a child of, I'll do the shortened version of the story, but I had a sibling that no matter what you told him, like he would do the opposite. And I remember having a conversation when I was pretty young, maybe third grade or so. And my mother saying so that I can tell you, hey, the stove is hot, and I don't need to be an expert in the mechanics of the heating element to know that it's red. It's hot. If I put my hand, I can feel the heat. Therefore, don't touch it. But this sibling didn't matter. Had to go experience life and make all those mistakes. And so my mother said that there are some people that can learn from this, see and recognize and learn from the mistakes of others, and others that have to go and experience it for themselves. Yeah. I like to think that those of us that are in the governance space, like we can see, we don't have to experience to know
we
that.
have seen it. Don't do it.
And the interesting thing is that our show is also Copilot from excitement to governance. And when things are so exciting, like AI, we are investing more time in figuring out the boundaries. Left, can I go a little bit more left than left, or a little bit more right than right? So I think that's also something which is new. It is so exciting to work with Copilot and agents and AI that we are really tempted to do more than we should do.
Diego, when you're sitting and doing deployment, again, everybody's excited about the new features. They want to get in there, they want to get their hands dirty, they want to play with it, they want to understand what's the ROI for the business. They're focused on the new capabilities. What are some of the most common gaps that you're seeing on the governance side? What short-term, long-term implications are there to not really looking at and thinking seriously about governance?
Okay, one thing that has really hit me recently that I started noticing is an old conversation, versioning, because there are a lot of people who are coming into the workforce now who do not have the plus years of experience that we do with SharePoint and information architecture and all that. Nope. Especially kids like coming out of college and all that. And seeing folks not saving a document as in document 1_final, no, this is final, blah, 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 blah. That conversation has resurfaced because Copilot can be as smart as it is, but it doesn't. But if you're feeding an agent, okay, you're creating an agent brand new and you're feeding 10 documents that are somewhat similar, Copilot is not going to be like, hey, you're loading me with this T word here. You're loading me with junk. And I'm not going to be able to give you like an informed decision based upon what you're giving me. And that has something that I've mentioned in product feedback discussions that, hey, if there is at least a way for you to just give me like an exclamation point if I put in documents that are very similar, saying, hey, these documents are somewhat similar, your Copilot results are not going to be as expected. I think that could be helpful. But back to your question, Christian, I feel like there is a need to go back to basics. There's a need to go back to training. And so coming in the other, like one of the issues that for instance I'm going through right now is we're still in the process of moving network shares into SharePoint. Often what happens is grab the whole thing, lift and shift, and put it all in SharePoint, and then you sort out the files, right? In a way, I get that approach because let's put all the documents in SharePoint, let Purview and let all those tools take care of it.
Well, so some most common, Diego, sorry to interrupt, is because you're licensing, you're paying for duplicate licenses for this old system. So a lot of organizations that I've worked with, we've all been involved in migrations as well, but is because they're like, hey, we need to shut down these servers. We need to not pay these other licenses. And so that's a big reason for the idea of the lift and shift, even though you can spend a little bit more time and organize before you move it over. It's like getting ready to move. Let's put things in boxes first rather than just throw loose items into the moving truck.
Also, another thing, Microsoft 365 Archive. Learn how to use cold storage. Not everything has to be readily accessible, but back to what Joy was saying, people don't want to get rid of anything, right? They want everything live and ready, but that kind of defeats what people do, destroy your search. And then God forbid you're trying to create like a Copilot agent that, the searches through all your stuff too. It's not going to be good. And then you have that decline, the loss of like trust in Copilot, right? Because everyone wants the shiny thing, and then all of a sudden it's not shiny anymore.
That's a wonderful idea. For the very first time, I have now the idea, thanks to you, that we could also build an agent which automatically, when there are some circumstances and thresholds reached, this agent can also archive to a cold storage. Because technically, we have got now so many different connectors. And yesterday, there was a LinkedIn post from Victor Willem, and Victor showed him the new work from his craft team. And there are a bunch of new connectors. And these connectors, they connect to a file share or some other way of cold storage. And now we can create a Copilot Studio agent, which can archive to cold storage.
I know that's rolling out, so some people may not have seen that yet. So that hit like our tenant Tuesday last week, suddenly what was actions got changed to tools. And you've got all those integrations, all the tools. So you can start to see the granular controls. Here's what I can go right to do this, take this action in Outlook, or go out to SAP, or like I was dealing with Miro and Lucid Chart and Dropbox. And so it has a bunch of other controls. So it's not just using it as dumb storage. Oh, hey, there's this content, this artifact at this location. Let's go pull it in. It could actually, with those connectors, you can see, oh, I can add a line to Jira to add a new workbook, add a new workspace for all these different applications. So there's a lot more that you can do to automate in between those. And yeah, part of that is cleaning up, organizing, looking at those. Here's a common scenario that I run into talking about going back to version control, Diego, is that get a result. Like I always, when I demo, especially in Copilot, I use examples of topics that I know in depth on, so I can visually quickly see, no, that's not right. And one of them was, it came back with the response, or I'm like, this is clearly based on old data, 5-6 years old on this. And so I corrected. I said, no, that's incorrect. You need to look at 2025 data, or the latest that you have. And what is the response? It says, yes, you're correct. My apologies for this. And then it goes and gives a different answer based on me forcing it to go look at that later version. I thought you were going to go with Diego. Like my suggestion for the product team is, why by default does it not look for the
latest and
newest
greatest
version?
And that's, to Diego's point, training. If our users don't know to correct it.
But see, that's the thing. It's like, but this is my point of how to the product team. I can always go in and include a very lengthy prompt where I'm very specific, latest version of this, of go look at this and only look in this information at this area. You can always go and do that, but ask that and get a more specific, refined result. But shouldn't it be by default? Let's look at the body. Shouldn't it? It would say internal documentation, always look at the latest version.
Well, I know I'm the guest here, but let me pose a question to you guys. So one of the things, like you're just saying, okay, when you're creating an agent, you create on things that you know very well about. Okay, you're Christian, you know very well about 1 million things in this world. Okay, I know. And in several of the organizations that I have worked with over the years, I'm talking about healthcare, financial systems, like government stuff. It's like someone like me, of course, I have my personal opinion on certain topics, but a lot of the times I'm working with an organization that I'm not very familiar with the information that I'm managing. So more than ever with Copilot agents, you need the users now. The users need to give you feedback. It's not, oh, I'm here, I'm the developer, I'm sitting in my little corner, I build an app, and here is the app. Because now, if I'm creating a prompt, what's the point of me creating a prompt? Yeah, I can put you on the right path of creating the proper prompt that will give you the information that you want. But as a developer, as an architect, it's becoming harder and harder because I don't know. I'm not a subject matter expert in that field that I'm building something. So it's becoming more of a partnership, this whole governance stuff, because how can I go into some organization and say, you need to get rid of these documents because they're old? Being old is not necessarily a factor in it.
That's true. Not all old content is out of date. Like some policies, I mean, it may go back to the dawn of whatever, but if that's the most recent version, though, even if it is 5 years old, it's still
right. I think that's the difference. I agree.
Yeah.
Because the employee handbook might be 10 years old and still be relevant, but there's an update with the new HIPAA standards like that just got written a month ago. I want the month ago version of it. But
Copilot is just not strong enough in working with metadata, and all these informations are usually stored somewhere in the versioning of the file object and sometimes a metadata. But there is definitely a weakness of Copilot. But I'm 100% with you, Diego. We need to make sure that these topics are getting top of mind of the end users. And the end users are, since millions of years, hunters and collectors, and we need to make sure that they are getting a governance mindset where they think more about deletion and archiving and not only about collecting.
But that governance mindset brings me back to something that Joy was just saying too, or said a little earlier, which is a Brazilian saying that I was thinking right before this call today. I'll say it in Portuguese and you guys figure out the translation in your language. But in Portuguese is água mole em pedra dura, tanto bate até que fura. It basically means water constantly dripping will wear away the stone. There is an equivalent sentence in every language that I've looked it up already. But it's not set it and forget it. You do it, you tell people, you teach them, you build practice, you build a mentality. If the organization doesn't have that, you try to get as part of the vision, because otherwise you're just here on your soapbox trying to tell people, hey, we got to do this, we got to do this. You have to have that worked in, and it's a constant. You can't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of organizations, I think that this activity, I mean, it's part of operational excellence. It is an ongoing thing. Governance is not a checklist. It's not a one-time, we did all those things. We're now well governed. Like, you were at that point in time and now it's past and somebody will mess something up. It's a constant going back and reviewing, looking at, here's how it's being used. We want people to use it more. Here are the issues that we're having. There's always feature related issues, but then there's the data quality related issues. So you're constantly cleaning those things up. Part of it for an organization, I think, to get them to understand the importance is, I think organizations need help in how do we quantify the benefits? How do we measure successful governance looks like? And it could be that you track the number of open and closed tickets around this issue. It could be that the number of documents that you've archived each month, have that in your dashboard.
Excellent.
Yeah, things like that, to go in, you can get really creative around that, but to show that, hey, this is something where there's value that's being, like, I know that there are search tools that are out there. And so back when we'd optimize for search performance, and they'd have kind of standard test search queries and time it and say, oh, we've improved the speed of search against these things. And you almost need to come up with something similar. And I suspect Copilot could help you develop that, but is to develop some prompts, some different internal tests to look at the quality of what you're getting back out.
And the other aspect is we need to be a little bit more conscious about our language and our wording. So in our last show, we had Matt Eining from Rancor here, and he said he doesn't like the wording readiness for Copilot, which was created by Microsoft or by somebody else, but Microsoft is using the word readiness, which means that you need to be ready for Copilot. But this whole Copilot and governance thing is not a readiness topic. It's an ongoing daily thing. And that's why I rather prefer this way of mindset thinking, because it's not that you train the organization for a few hours to be Copilot ready and then everything works perfectly. No, it's a daily thing.
Yeah.
And therefore, we need to also treat topics like change management not like a campaign, but more like a daily habit, actually.
It's a cultural change. So here's a small question, Diego. How do you make successful cultural change in 30 seconds?
And go.
You put me on the spot already, but look, it's a continuous improvement. You have to keep doing, you have to keep demonstrating. It is an uphill battle. It doesn't happen overnight. I've been saying this for quite some time already. These changes, especially in Copilot, okay, for me, I'll tell you one thing. For me, for my organization and the current moment, I'm not even bringing up the word Copilot readiness anymore. I'm like, we need to secure our information, because that has a much nicer ringtone, or it has a much nicer tone than just saying Copilot readiness. Because sometimes people are like, we don't want to do Copilot. We're just doing Copilot as a test. I'm like, okay, but the governance doesn't sleep.
Still needs to be done, regardless.
That is what you do.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's which is a risk management discussion. It's to say, look, our intellectual property is the phrasing that I always used when I was doing this, coming up in the information management space in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's like, we have potential risks with our IP. We need to secure our IP and understand, how are people sharing? Where is it stored? How's the handling of this? Kind of each of those different stages. And if you're going for any kind of government, security compliance certifications, you have to have all that documented.
What Diego and I did, I shouldn't say Diego and I, Diego did a session in New York recently and then invited me to crash it, which was a ton of fun. So I virtually crashed his session. He was talking through like you got to a point and then it kind of adoption was upticking in some areas, but then you had to, like you said, back away from even saying the Copilot word because there were some red flags that came up. You're like, you know what? Sometimes you have to pause the buzzword work to actually do the real work so the adoption can actually be successful and continue. And I think it's where that partnership where the business and IT is so very important is to build that trust up. So you can, Diego, as their trusted advisor in this, go, let's look at this because we will find success addressing these topics. Then we can continue.
Like in my case, one of the ways is to work those in my projects for the year. Maybe I can't convince upper management, but I say, hey, my goals for the year, one of them is improving governance. One of them is ensuring, now hear me out, because this is one that I'm starting now. Maybe in a few months from now, we can have a follow-up discussion. And I will tell you how I went with that. But one of the things that I started looking into is removing the everyone except external users from the organization, from the organization. That was the one group that, hey, if you just want to add everyone to your site, add to it. So years and years of people just adding that left and right whenever they wanted to share documents with the whole organization, right? Now Microsoft, I suggest you stop using that. When they say I suggest you stop using that, just watch. It's going to be a few months down the road, they're going to be like, we're killing that group. So when I heard that, to me is like my first warning sign, stop using it. So I'm starting now a plan to phase that out, to ensure that content is only shared with people that it needs to be shared with.
So I always bring this up once in a while when this topic comes up. I will say that at the annual MVP summit a few years back, when I remember we're sitting in the room for a team session, and it was Caruana Timu at Microsoft, and the product team came in, made announcements and there were probably 300 plus MVPs that were focused on information management collaboration topics sitting in the room for these teams updates. And they announced the creation of the all company team to be able to have everybody in the company on that. Everyone booed loudly, like this, like bad idea. And what it was Microsoft being pressured by some very large customers, like that wanted to essentially use Teams as an intranet. And we're like, this is against everything we've been talking about. It's like, I'm a member of teams that are relevant to me, and people will invite me into teams. I'm not on that project. I'm not going to do anything on it. It's like, decline. Don't need to be in that space. And so by having everyone in the company can be in this team, I'm still against it, is that what happens is that everybody throws anything in there. Yep. There's no governance. There's no cleanup around that. It doesn't make sense. And
it's the Hotel California of teams.
That's
you come in, but you will never leave.
You still create those? I honestly can't remember because it's been a long time since I did it, but I think you could do like between 3 and 5 or something like that, right?
I honestly can't remember. Something like that. I think 5.
Anyway, it was a proud moment where I didn't think that there was going to be that kind of overwhelming response from the fellow MVPs around that news, but that largely people got it. Like, this causes a lot of problems. I understand why Microsoft did it from a financial standpoint and the pressure of these large clients, but there's a reason why there's an intranet versus Teams. And so anyway, I want to get on a soapbox around those differences. I realize if you're a company of a certain size, there's not the need for a formal intranet out on SharePoint, for example, but I would argue with you that you don't have to be a large organization to have complex information management needs. Don't. Anyway.
That concept, Diego, of it's kind of like sharing a link with anyone in the organization. Today, that might be 100 people. But you don't know what that's going to look like in 6 months. And that link is still out there and anyone gets it. There might be a whole new department in a year if you're a growing company. Is that okay? Or can't answer that question today. So that's going to, may the force be with you.
I agree. I think we're still evolving in a way with that whole concept of not everything has to be shared with everyone. You have to actually think whatever you produce, who you're going to be sharing that with. Because the other side is kind of like, why don't you want to share that with everyone? Like, what are you trying to hide from the rest of them? So there is a little bit of that, but we just got to do it. And then the first question out of users to me is, how do I do it then? My answer is, you don't. You think of who you want to share that with, and then you share that with those people. It's
And
not.
let's see, why aren't they already where that content is if they should already have access to it? Why aren't they already there?
There's a lot of other issues that too with being careful of you've got to put more thought into where you're sharing something. Like we saw the proliferation of private chats and people doing things in private chats versus, hey, we're talking about this project. Why are we not having this conversation in the relevant channel or everybody who's a member of that project? Then you don't have to think about, did I include the right people with this? If they need to be there for that project, is again a reason why when I'm stop being active on a project and I do not need to have access to that, I will go and remove myself from that. I'll leave that project or I mute a channel that I just am not, it's still there if I need access to it. But people need to be more responsible about where they're collaborating with whom and what's the actual purpose of this. And I push people constantly towards the stop doing the private chats. And then you have to create a new chat or add these other people to this other chat. And you're creating all these cliques, all
But
these small rooms.
They can't be responsible if they don't know how to be. Which is
so a few minutes ago we talked about stickers. I would like to have a new sticker which says every time you screenshot the private chat, a little kitten dies.
Yeah.
Because I'm coming from Yammer. So a couple of years ago, I was a Yammer customer success manager working for Microsoft Germany. And then I was the most active user on Yammer in Microsoft Germany. And I loved it so much because this was just a fluid communication. I could easily mention people who were not in this Yammer community. I could mention them. We had conversations. But now everything is hidden in private chats. And I'm a member of Germany's Society for Knowledge Management. I'm an active member, and it really hurts to spend the whole day in private chats and private channels because it is a nightmare for knowledge management.
Truth.
And Diego, if you don't know the reference to that, I actually I created a t-shirt years ago back in the SharePoint days where it had a picture of a kitten with the big sad eyes looking up. I know that you're as a proud father of a cat. But so it was every time someone does a single server install of SharePoint, God kills a kitten was the t-shirt. And so it's like terrible. I did a limited run of those. And
we need more fancy t-shirts like the SharePoint from Christian. So we need more of this crazy fancy stuff. I miss it so much.
Yeah, I still put those out occasionally. Every few years I do a version of those. But now stickers. And then we got to do socks and that. But
and you know what's great for designing stickers? Copilot.
Oh, yeah.
Through Microsoft Designer, you can do
now it's better. They've changed the large language model from DALL-E 3 to Sora, and now it's better also in spelling and typing.
Yes, it is.
Improvement.
Yep. I would like to know just a question on culture again, Diego, is have you noticed a difference in adoption success between technical and non-technical teams?
Okay. In my case, I am seeing more and more users. And in a way, I feel like that's a little bit of the gateway drug too. Okay. But people get into Copilot once they realize the power of recording meeting minutes, right? That they don't have to take notes anymore. They can just have a free flowing conversation. Hey, here's what you got. I think everyone already sees the value in that. The part that I feel like the less technical people are struggling more with is the content creation part of it. So creating documents and creating PowerPoint presentations, and or what I say all the time, do you know that you can use Copilot in your Excel spreadsheet? So that part, I feel like with end users, it's still a slow process that they're still figuring it out, because initially they're like, oh, can I get Copilot so I can record my meetings? And it's the more technical folks that see the value of that. But then you have folks who are already coding using GitHub Copilot, like it's their new day job, because it is. It varies. I think, and there are so many, not just Copilot, there's so many other non M365 apps out there that
Generative
also
AI
do
is all over the
some
place.
tiny functionality.
Yeah.
Yeah. People just have
You know, it's interesting. I have a friend that does sales for a company that makes parts for the oil and gas industry. And he called me yesterday. He was like, do you still talk to people about how to use Microsoft stuff? And I was like, all the time, friend, all the time. So he was like, my company needs to wrap their head around what this Copilot thing is and how to do it. And it's just, we started just having a conversation. He's like, you know what I wish? Because you can imagine as a salesperson, he has lots of customers, lots of vendors, things like that. His inbox is one place where he does most of his work. He's like, I wish I could just have Copilot that would write a daily summary for me of all the stuff that's in my inbox. He was like, wait. So they, not to sound like I'm talking down about anybody, but the less technical folks that are out there, they've got a wish list in their head. Oh, could AI do this for me? But for one reason or another, maybe they don't know there's a way to talk to their friendly neighborhood IT person, or I don't know. They're not coming forward and going, how can AI do this for me? What's the best way? Can I? Can it? Can you? How do we?
Yeah.
And I think there's so much appetite for it because they're thinking about it. They want to know how AI can make their life better. But how do we make them feel comfortable coming to IT and saying, hey, can I point Copilot at my inbox and say, look at all of the emails in the last 30 days with this customer and write a summary? And then take that summary and put it in the Copilot for Word and go and make a report, please.
That's the first agent that I went and built, was to do exactly that. Look at all of so it's what I use when I demo, and I say, look at all of the last week's emails, meeting minutes, private chats, channel conversations, and then you can be more specific with this customer on this topic, following this thread, or just say in general. And I do want another one where I say where in all of those places where that someone has assigned me a task, whether somebody has asked a question, whether there is a project that I own where a question was asked or a task assigned, but to no one yet, there's an unassigned task out there. Surface all of those, put it in a list, a bulleted list, put it in a table with prioritize it based on due date, severity of the issue, whatever. You could give it all those kinds of controls, and then say, and run it and send me an email every Monday morning at 6 a.m. of the previous week. So I could do a checklist of, okay, I already did that. Oh, I almost forgot about that one. Add it to my schedule.
Totally.
And that's possible. So I've seen a few days ago in the past, we had this Copilot actions and then they were rolled back.
Yeah.
But now since a few days, you can schedule a prompt. So you have your favorite one-step prompt about your top 10 emails, top 10 channel conversations, top 10 private chats. And then you get a daily summary and you can schedule it that it runs every single day at 6 p.m. So that's working now since a few days.
Yeah.
So I have
And
some
it's a
thoughts
game
on that.
changer. So I'm using this daily recap prompt since the first day of MVP Summit, because Andy Honeycutt shared this monster prompt with me, and I'm running it every single evening. And for me, it's a true game changer because it creates for me peace of mind. Because then, before I shut down my laptop at the end of the working day, I can look what are the open mails which I need to answer, or how do I prepare for next day. So this prompt is for me extremely helpful. And I'm using it every single day since MVP week.
So I have some thoughts on that. So as an architect, I feel like sometimes it's hard to pass the message across because, oh, here he comes talking about Copilot again. So I can have meetings, I can have training sessions with the art of the possible and all that. But if I'm speaking, people feel like I'm pushing that down their throats, right? That's why I feel sometimes having user groups is important. And what I find to be like really effective is when user A shares their prompt with user B. So guiding people, hey, share what is working for you. Don't let it be from me. I want to hear what you get, because you know what? Everyone has a voice in this now. It's not, hey, I'm the coder and you guys don't know how to code. No, anyone can write a prompt, right? If you're a baby and you know how to ask for food, you can write a prompt. But my point is, if users are like feeding and sharing these experiences from one another, I feel like it's more effective.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just me giving the guidelines, just me dictating things. And it's like, no, guys, this is not me anymore. It's all of you. And please learn some crazy stuff, because I want to learn from you too.
That's why Viva Engage is such a good platform for this. Not teams, but having a community where they can come share. You have to have a moderator for it, someone that's got eyes on it. But man, that can be a powerful adoption tool.
I've always been a fan of I've set this up at a number of different companies, but this goes back to my time at EDS in the early 90s. There was a like twice a month, a sort of a user group, but it was like a brown bag lunch meeting. You bring in your lunch, you sit in the conference room, and different peers were sharing, here's what I'm building, here's what I'm working on. And it wasn't always completed, and other people may have, I did something similar. Hey, I did this. Oh, you approached this differently. Here's what I did. And so you learn from that. You see what other people are working on. You get ideas like, oh, I need that tool. I need that app. And to go and institute something like that, saying, hey, this now every Friday, this room is dedicated to this. And then you have to do a little bit of upsell to get people to show up for this. Once they see that, hey, it's non-confrontational, people are like sharing things, you start to get people that way like, hey, I've got something I'd be happy to come share next week.
Seems like a community, Christian.
Almost a community, right?
Fancy brand new ideas, Christian.
I know it's crazy. I know.
But it just might work.
Classic movie there. Master of Disguise. For those who don't know, if you don't have children, it's just a what is it, a Dana Carvey?
Dana Carvey. Oh my God, I remember that one.
Oh yeah.
So it's it's something that my now adult children's will still quote once in a while. Someone will drop the random turtle. Yeah. Anyway, you've got to go see it.
Yeah.
It's a movie. He wrote the movie for his kids. And so it's really is a movie for Dana Carvey's kids, and all of the jokes and things that he did with his family, and then made it into a spy movie that's just ridiculous for kids, but it's fun.
It's fun.
Diego, really appreciate your time. I know that we're just over here on the time, but really appreciate them. This is just one of those ongoing discussions that we need to have. It's healthy inside your organizations just to talk about this. What are the cultural implications? We didn't even get into the whole issue of whether leadership supports it and they're on board and supporting it. It can be difficult if you don't have somebody, some leadership stakeholder in all this to help move things along. But it's healthy. It's the right way to do it, is just to start the conversation about what could we be doing. And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to hire some expensive outside consultant to come in and move things. That you can do it from the ground up just by getting people to recognize, here are things that we should be doing. What can we do now?
Exactly. And there's also no blueprint for governance which fits into for each organization. We just need to increase the culture of having conversations about governance. How to improve, what goes well, where are we failing, how can we improve, how should we iterate? So we need this kind of culture. We talk more about governance.
Now, if you reach out to any one of the four of us, we will have strong opinions. We'll tell you exactly what we think you should be doing there. And give you process structure.
I like your suggestion, Diego, though. Sometimes you have to step away from the buzzword and go, this is our focus right now. Don't worry about that. I think that's something we all needed to hear, I think, especially those folks that are in the trenches now. You don't have to focus on the buzz. You can focus on the practical.
One final piece of advice that I would give is the following. don't assign licenses based on job title. Assign licenses to people who actually use them, because a lot of times you just give away licenses to people because you want to be nice to them. Hey, here's the shiny thing. And no one is using the shiny thing. And then the people who actually need that, they don't have it. So be conscious of who you're giving. If you're having a limited amount of license, if you have it for the whole organization, great. But not everyone's got that, right? So if you're giving out to an initial group of people, give it to the ones who are using, and do not be afraid of taking the licenses away. Create a cycle, create a review cycle. It's like, hey, if you don't use it, we're going to reassign to someone else. Do that from day one. So people know that, hey, if you're not using it, we're going to reassign it. And it's a little different than what it used to be. It's got to be done.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we've got a busy schedule coming up. I believe we have our next 3 months. We have our guests all locked in. So we're like, we've got a whole plan here. Maybe we need to create the artwork months in advance and be able to advertise. Look at this. Here's what's coming up. It's a little extra effort that maybe somebody needs to do that thing. But yeah.
When you're the navigator on one of your road trips, you're taking a break from behind the wheel.
Yeah, that's right.
Or you delegate it to Copilot.
I could give it the template, see what it comes up with. It would come up with something that is akin to, looks similar to the template, but it's not quite the template. But yeah, it's getting there with those.
I don't care. I just need to look a little bit more beautiful. That's everything that matters.
Actually, it was one of the things with Copilot with the PowerPoint. They just added that capability now, so you can add your template, and it will then use your template, which is, it only took a lot of screaming by hundreds of MVPs for Microsoft to realize, oh, we should do that. We should support that.
That is one thing the MVP community is good about. We can rally behind dissatisfaction.
Yeah, that's a better way of saying it. Screaming at or rallying behind. I like yours better. Yeah. Yes. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks, Diego, for being on here. And we'll see everybody in 30 days. 30-ish days for the next one. So we'll see you next month.